Have you ever noticed how the loudest people in the room are rarely the wisest? The truth is, we live in a world addicted to noise. Everyone's talking, shouting, posting, commenting, desperate to be heard. But almost nobody is listening. I want you to do something right now. Notice the urge you feel to fill the silence, that uncomfortable itch when conversation stops, that compulsion to check your phone when things get quiet. This isn't random. This is a disease of the modern mind. The ancient Zen masters discovered something revolutionary. The more you speak, the less power your words carry. The more you remain silent, the more impact you have when you finally choose to speak. Imagine having such inner certainty that you never again feel the need to justify yourself, to over-explain, or to fill awkward silences. Imagine the respect you'd command when people realize your words are rare but always meaningful. This isn't fantasy. This is the forgotten art of noble silence. Today, I'm going to share with you the first of 5 transformational lessons from Buddhist and Zen wisdom. What I'm about to reveal has changed the lives of kings and beggars alike for over 2,000 years. It's a power hidden in plain sight, available to anyone brave enough to claim it. Pay close attention. Your relationship with silence is about to change forever. Let me show you the power that emerges when you stop being a fool and embrace the wisdom of silence. Now that you understand the value of silence, let's explore its opposite, the dangers that come when we speak without thinking. This is our second wisdom. There once was a monk who had studied for 20 years in the mountains. After long meditation, he experienced a moment of deep insight. Excited, he rushed down to the village to share his revelation with everyone he met. He spoke eloquently about his experience, describing every detail, explaining his new understanding to all who would listen. That night, his master found him sitting alone, looking troubled. "What's wrong?" asked the master. The monk replied, "Something strange has happened. The clarity I felt this morning has vanished. It's as if my insight escaped through my open mouth." The master nodded and said, "What you truly understand, you cannot give away with words. What you give away with words, you never truly understood." This story teaches us something many of us learn the hard way. When we rush to speak about our insights before they've fully ripened within us, we often lose them. It's like opening the oven door too early when baking bread. The loaf collapses. Words have incredible power. They can start wars or create peace. They can wound deeply or heal completely. But most people use them carelessly, like children playing with matches. Think about the last time you spoke without thinking and later regretted it. Those words created ripples of consequences. This is what the wise call karma. There are 3 poisons that often hide in our words. The first is greed, when we speak to get something, to manipulate, to look good in others' eyes. The second is anger, when harsh words flow from our irritation, impatience, or judgment. The third is confusion, when we talk without clarity, spreading misunderstanding and doubt. Each time we speak from these places, we harm others and ourselves. There's an old Zen saying, "The word that leaves your mouth never returns." Unlike an arrow that's been shot, you can never take back what you've said. Even an apology cannot completely erase the impact of harmful words. They leave traces in the heart like footprints in wet cement. When the cement dries, the marks remain. Have you noticed how some people talk endlessly about themselves, about their achievements, their opinions, their problems? This kind of speech almost always comes from ego, the false self that constantly needs attention and approval. True wisdom appears when we speak not to impress others, but to genuinely help or connect. The ancient teachers described the restless mind as a monkey mind, jumping from branch to branch, never still, always chattering. And what happens outside reflects what happens inside. A person who cannot sit in silence likely has a mind that never rests. Their endless words are just the overflow of their endless thoughts. They speak to escape the discomfort of their own inner noise. So before you speak, ask yourself 3 questions. Is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? If what you're about to say doesn't pass at least 2 of these tests, perhaps silence is the wiser choice. Remember, fools speak from habit. The wise speak from necessity. And the wisest know when nothing needs to be said at all. Now that we understand both the power of silence and the dangers of careless speech, let's explore how to actually practice silence in our daily lives. This is our 3rd wisdom. Many people misunderstand silence. They think it means just keeping your mouth shut, holding words back, or being passive. But true silence, conscious silence, is something completely different. It's not the absence of sound, but the presence of awareness. In the mountains of Japan, a young student approached the teacher and said, "I've been practicing silence for 3 years." The teacher looked at him and asked, "Who have you been trying to impress?" The student was shocked. He thought he was doing something special by not speaking, but he had missed the point entirely. He was just suppressing words while his mind remained noisy. Real silence begins inside. The difference is like this. Imagine 2 ponds. One has been frozen over. Nothing moves on the surface, but underneath, currents still flow. The other is completely still all the way through, clear, awake, and responsive. The first pond is like forced silence, stiff and unnatural. The second is like conscious silence, alive and aware. How do you develop this conscious silence? Start with watching your thoughts. Find a quiet place, sit comfortably, and just observe the urge to speak before it becomes words. Notice how thoughts arise like bubbles from the bottom of a lake. Don't try to stop them, that creates inner tension. Just watch them come and go without grabbing onto any of them. After practicing this for even a few minutes each day, you'll start to notice the small gap between a thought arising and your reaction to it. This tiny space is the doorway to freedom. When you can see the impulse to speak before words form, you gain the power to choose, to speak or to remain silent. True silence creates space for real listening. Most people don't actually listen. They just wait for their turn to speak while planning what they'll say next. But when you practice conscious silence, you begin to hear not just words, but the feelings behind them. You notice the tiny changes in someone's voice, the pause between their sentences, what they're not saying. This is compassionate listening, a rare and precious gift you can offer others. Try bringing short periods of silence into your everyday life. When you wake up, take 5 minutes to sit quietly before checking your phone. When eating, put down your fork between bites and really taste your food. When walking, leave your headphones at home and listen to the world around you. When in conversation, practice waiting 3 seconds before responding to what someone says. Your breath is the perfect anchor for practicing silence. When you feel the urge to fill empty space with words, take 1 conscious breath instead. Feel the air entering your body, the slight pause at the top of the breath, and the release as you exhale. This simple act brings you back to the present moment where true silence lives. Remember that silence isn't just something you practice alone on a meditation cushion. The deepest silence happens between people, in that sacred space where 2 beings meet with full attention. When you sit with a friend without the need to speak, when you walk together in comfortable quiet, when you share a meaningful glance that says more than words ever could, this is silence as connection, not isolation. Now we move to our 4th wisdom, how to speak when speaking is necessary. Because while silence is powerful, there are times when words are needed. The challenge is to transform ordinary speech into something wise and helpful. Long ago, a wise teacher shared 4 simple tests for deciding whether to speak. First, is it true? Not just factually correct, but deeply honest. Second, is it helpful? Will these words actually serve the person hearing them? Third, is it timely? Even the right words at the wrong moment can cause harm. And fourth, is it spoken with kindness? Even difficult truths should be delivered with care for the other person's heart. These 4 tests can change your entire relationship with speaking. Think of them as a filter that lets only your best words through. Most of what we say wouldn't pass even 2 of these tests. But speech that passes all 4 becomes something rare and precious. Wisdom shared at exactly the right moment. The hardest part for most people is learning to tell the difference between necessary and unnecessary speech. A helpful practice is to pause before speaking and ask, does this really need to be said? Does it need to be said by me? Does it need to be said right now? If you're not sure, it's usually better to remain quiet. In a famous story, a young monk was known for his constant questions. He would pester his teacher day and night with endless inquiries about the nature of reality, enlightenment, and proper practice. One day, instead of answering yet another question, the teacher asked, if you were dying of thirst and could not speak, how would you ask for water? This stopped the young monk in his tracks. He realized that there are ways of seeking wisdom beyond asking questions. Sometimes we need to find answers through our own direct experience. This points to a beautiful practice, asking questions instead of making statements. When you frame your words as questions, you invite others into exploration rather than trying to convince them of your view. What do you think about this? Opens a door. Here's what I think about this can close one. The wisest teachers often answer a question with another question. Not to be difficult, but to guide the student toward their own understanding. Sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all. When someone speaks harshly to you, or shares an opinion that seems wrong, or asks a question that has no good answer, silence can be the wisest choice. Not as a punishment or withdrawal, but as a space of respect for the complexity of the situation. This kind of responsive silence says, I hear you, but words are not what's needed right now. The secret to transforming anger into peace lies in the pause. When you feel upset and ready to speak words you might regret, simply stop. Take one breath. In that tiny moment, you create space for wisdom to arise. It's like the difference between reacting and responding. Reaction is automatic, while response is chosen. With practice, that pause becomes your most valuable tool for turning potential harm into healing. Remember how a tea master pours tea, slowly, with full attention, stopping at exactly the right moment before the cup overflows. Your words should be like this too, measured, intentional, filling the need completely without a single drop of excess. This is the art of saying enough without saying too much. When you speak from stillness rather than from mental noise, your words carry a different quality. They land differently in the hearts of those who hear them. They come from a deeper place and touch a deeper place. This is what transforms ordinary speech into words of wisdom. We arrive now at our 5th and final wisdom, how silence becomes more than just a practice, but a direct path to freedom. This is the deepest teaching, where silence reveals its ultimate gift. When most people think about who they are, they identify with their thoughts, feelings, and especially their words. I am what I think. I am what I say. But is this really true? There's a simple experiment you can try right now. Close your eyes for a moment and notice. When you're not speaking or thinking in words, do you still exist? Of course you do. This points to something profound. There is a part of you that exists beyond words, beyond concepts, beyond all the stories you tell about yourself. In the silence, you meet your true nature. There's a story about a student named Hui Nang who worked in the monastery kitchen. He was illiterate and couldn't read the sacred texts, but he listened carefully whenever they were recited. One day, he heard a verse that sparked something deep inside him. That night, unable to sleep, he slipped away to the master's room. He didn't speak a single word, but simply bowed and waited in silence. The master recognized something special in this silent presence and later chose Huineng as his successor, not because of his eloquent speech or vast knowledge, but because of the profound silence he embodied. Huineng went on to become one of the most influential teachers in history, all beginning with that moment of silent understanding. Most of our suffering comes from being caught in pairs of opposites: good and bad, right and wrong, success and failure. We spend our lives swinging between these, always wanting one and avoiding the other. But silence offers a way beyond this endless back and forth. In deep silence, you begin to see that these opposites aren't as separate as they seem. They're like two sides of a coin, different but inseparable. This seeing beyond duality isn't something you figure out with your thinking mind. It's something you experience directly in the space where words fall away. In deep silence, you begin to see that these opposites aren't as separate as they seem. They're like two sides of a coin, different but inseparable. This seeing beyond duality isn't something you figure out with your thinking mind. It's something you experience directly in the space where words fall away. Just pure experience. This isn't some exotic state reserved for monks in caves. You've tasted glimpses of it many times in your life, while lost in music, immersed in nature, or in moments of deep love. Silence is the doorway to this natural state of oneness. One of the most beautiful insights that emerges from silence is how connected everything really is. When the constant chatter of thoughts quiets down, you start to feel that you're not as separate from the world as you thought. The boundary between in here and out there begins to soften. You realize that just as waves are inseparable from the ocean, you are inseparable from the whole of life. This isn't some abstract philosophy. It's a direct experience available in deep silence, and it changes how you move through the world. Beyond all concepts, beyond all words and ideas, silence reveals what some traditions call non-conceptual wisdom. This is understanding that doesn't come through thinking or figuring things out. It's more like recognizing your own face in the mirror, immediate, direct, requiring no explanation. The deepest truths can never be captured in words. They can only be pointed to and then experienced directly in the silence of your own heart. The final secret of silence is this: you don't have to withdraw from life to find it. True silence isn't opposed to sound, activity, or engagement with the world. It's the spacious awareness that contains all these things. Like the sky that holds both storms and sunshine, silence is your natural state, always present beneath the weather of your changing thoughts and feelings. If these 5 wisdoms of silence have resonated with you, I want you to know something important. You're not alone on this journey. In a world that rarely values silence, it takes courage to swim against the current of constant noise. It takes wisdom to recognize the power of the unspoken. And it takes community to sustain this practice over time. That's why I'm inviting you to join our growing family of seekers who are rediscovering these ancient truths together. By subscribing to this channel, you'll receive more stories and teachings that have transformed lives for centuries, all presented in ways that speak directly to our modern challenges. Each video is created with the same care and attention as you give to brewing a perfect cup of tea, with patience, precision, and heart. And your presence here makes the shared journey possible. If you found value in today's teaching, would you consider sharing it with someone who might benefit? Perhaps there's a friend who talks too much without listening, or a family member who struggles with inner noise, or a colleague who would appreciate these timeless insights. Your single share could be the doorway through which someone else discovers the life-changing power of silence. Remember, in a world full of noise, your choice to cultivate silence isn't just a personal practice. It's a gift you offer to everyone around you, and it begins with a single moment of choosing presence over distraction, wisdom over idle talk, and depth over surface living. Thank you for your attentive presence. Until next time, may you discover the treasure that waits for you in the spaces between your words. Imagine walking into a Japanese Zen monastery at dawn. The air is cool, birds are singing softly, and a bell rings in the distance. But what strikes you most is the silence. Not an empty silence, but one that feels alive, full of meaning. This is what the ancient teachers called noble silence, a practice that goes back to Buddha himself. You see, when Buddha was asked certain deep questions about the universe, he would sometimes remain completely silent. Not because he didn't know the answers, but because he understood that some truths cannot be captured in words. They must be experienced directly. His silence wasn't empty. It was teaching without teaching. But how can silence teach us anything? You might wonder. Well, friend, think about it this way. When you're constantly speaking, you're only sharing what you already know. But when you're silent, you create space to discover something new. That's why in Zen monasteries, monks spend hours in silent meditation. They're not avoiding speech. They're diving deeper than words can go. There's a beautiful story about a student who approached a master with questions about life, the universe, and enlightenment. He talked for hours, explaining his thoughts and theories. The master simply listened and then invited him for tea. As they sat together, the master began pouring tea into the student's cup. He poured and poured until the cup overflowed onto the table, the floor, everywhere. The shocked student cried out, "Stop! The cup is full." The master smiled gently and said, "Like this cup, your mind is full of your own opinions and speculations. How can I show you Zen unless you first empty your cup?" This is what silence does. It empties our cups so we can receive fresh wisdom. Now, there's something important you should understand. Not all silence is the same. Some people remain quiet because they're shy or afraid. Others stay silent to hide or avoid. This is passive silence, and it doesn't lead to wisdom. What Zen masters practice is conscious silence, a vibrant, awake quietness that comes from deep attention. It's the difference between a pond that's stagnant and one that's perfectly still yet full of life beneath the surface. Have you ever heard of the famous Zen riddle? What is the sound of one hand clapping? Masters would give this puzzle to their students not to torture them with an impossible question, but to guide them beyond the limitations of logical thinking. When students sit with this question in silence, eventually they realize that the answer cannot be found in words or concepts. It can only be discovered in the silent space beyond thinking. In our world today, we often value people who speak well, who have quick answers and clever comebacks. But in Zen temples, they have a different saying. Your actions speak so loudly, I cannot hear what you are saying. Masters watch what you do, not just what you say. A student might speak beautifully about compassion, but does he help an elder carry water up the mountain? Another might talk endlessly about patience, but how does she react when served cold food? Your silent actions reveal your true understanding. The final part of this wisdom is perhaps the most practical. Silence isn't just about not speaking. It's about creating clarity in your mind. When you sit in silence for even 10 minutes, watching your thoughts without chasing after them, something magical happens. The mental noise begins to settle, like muddy water becoming clear. You start to see the difference between useful thoughts and mental chatter. You begin to notice the small gaps between thoughts, tiny doorways to a deeper wisdom. So today, my friend, I invite you to experience this first wisdom for yourself. Find a quiet moment in your day. It doesn't need to be long, even 5 minutes will do. Sit comfortably, breathe gently, and just be silent. Don't try to force thoughts away, but don't follow them either. Just watch them come and go, like clouds passing in a vast sky. This simple practice, done regularly, will begin to reveal why Zen masters treasure silence as the doorway to true wisdom.